Indiana, 1890. A town hidden in fog and the sound of its own silence. They called it Rocky Creek, a quiet settlement surrounded by cornfields and coal smoke. By day, it looked peaceful. By night, it felt like it was listening. The air held its breath that winter. The moon refused to shine. People began to disappear, one by one, as if the earth itself was swallowing them whole. No one saw blood, no one found footprints, only the whisper of wind near the old bridge. It was said the bridge could breathe. That when the fog was thick enough, something beneath it inhaled. And on that night, it called a name. By sunrise, the town looked normal again. Bakers lit ovens, children ran through the mud, and the newspaper boy shouted headlines that no one wanted to read. For friends stood by the blacksmith's forge, staring at that paper. Daniel Whitaker, the blacksmith's son with soot on his hands and courage in his eyes. Eli Brooks, the preacher's boy who searched for answers no prayer could give. Sam Granger, strong, loyal, and too brave for his own good. And Lyra Bennett, the mayor's daughter who dreamed in ways that felt more like memories. They all heard the same story, they all ignored it. Until Lyra stopped sleeping. Each night, she saw a light in the woods. Each morning, she woke with a mark on her wrist, a faint silver line, thin as thread. She said the light was whispering. She said it knew her name. When they returned to the bridge, the air changed. It didn't move like air. It pressed against them. The mist curled inward, like it wanted to see their faces. Beneath the planks, the sound of breathing grew louder. Something ancient was waking up. The fog thinned, just enough to reveal what looked like a burn mark carved into the bridge post. A circular symbol, cracked by a line of lightning through its center. Daniel touched it, and the air sparked. Eli shouted, but the sound came out slow, like the world was underwater. Lyra stepped forward, and the mark on her wrist began to glow. The ground trembled, the bridge groaned. And somewhere in the distance, the church bell rang, even though no one had pulled the rope. That night, no one slept. The next morning, the town pretended again. That's what small towns do best, they bury fear under breakfast. But fear doesn't die when you stop talking about it. It waits. Lyra sat by her window, staring at her wrist as the light pulsed softly. Outside, the fog rolled over the fields, thicker than before. Somewhere under that fog, a shadow opened its eyes. And that was the night Rocky Creek stopped belonging to the living. The woods of Indiana never stayed quiet for long. After that night on the bridge, silence felt heavier, like the trees were holding their breath. The air smelled of coal dust and rain that never came. Daniel spent mornings in the forge, hammering steel that no one had ordered. Lyra walked to the edge of the cornfields and stared at the fog line that never lifted. Eli dug through old church books until his fingers were black with dust. Sam stayed close to them all, because someone had to. 3 wells. That's what the old ledgers called them. Shadow wells, sealed long before the town was even built. They weren't holes in the ground, they were doors. And now, one had opened. Eli found the first clue in a burned-out hymn book. A symbol. The same mark that glowed on Lyra's wrist. Under it, words half erased by time, when one breathes, 3 will follow. By dusk, the 4 of them stood by the riverbank, staring at the second well. It wasn't a pit this time, it was the water itself. The current moved backwards, fighting the pull of the earth. Lyra's mark began to shine again. The light wasn't bright. It was alive. The river bent toward her, like it recognized something older than the town itself. Daniel placed the rebuilt coil beside her, a small device of brass and lightning that hummed like a heartbeat. Eli whispered old words from the ledger. Sam held his lantern steady even as the glass shook. The water rose. Not like a wave, like breath. The second well exhaled darkness, thick and slow. Lyra stepped closer. The air trembled. The light in her hand pulsed once, and the darkness folded back into itself. Like something that had been waiting finally went to sleep. The coil burned out in Daniel's hand. The river ran forward again. And from the woods came a voice. Not human. Not echo. Something in between. You close one mouth and feed another. They ran until the trees blurred together. By morning, half the town said they saw lightning in the forest with no storm to cause it. The other half refused to talk about it at all. The church bell cracked at sunrise. The mayor locked himself in his office. The newspaper ran out of ink. And in the middle of it all, Lyra whispered the name she had heard in her dreams. VALTRON. Eli found it later in the records of the church. A name of a warden, a guardian of something vast and unseen. But this one had turned. He wasn't protecting the wells anymore. He was feeding them. That night, the 4 of them stood before the third well. The largest, beneath the old mill. The mill wheels turned against the river's flow. Shadows danced inside the windows like memories on fire. Lyra's hand burned silver. Daniel's coil hummed weakly. Eli's voice faltered but didn't stop. Sam's lantern flickered once, then steadied. The mill roared as the seal broke. And for a heartbeat, they saw him. VALTRON, not a man, not a monster, but both. His eyes glowed like dying stars. His shadow reached for the girl who bore his mark. Then everything went still. The next morning, the mill was gone. The river ran clear again, but the ground smelled like rain before lightning. Lyra didn't speak for days. Daniel didn't sleep. Eli wrote until his hand bled. And Sam stood guard, waiting for something to move. When Lyra finally spoke, her voice was not her own. He isn't gone. He's waiting between the wells. Eli nodded slowly. Then so are we. They didn't know what waited beyond the third seal. Only that if it broke, the world they knew would not hold. And as the sun set behind the fog, the last light of day drew a faint silver line across the horizon. A mark that matched the one on Lyra's wrist. The town slept uneasily. The earth did not. Morning never truly came to Rocky Creek after that night. The fog stayed. The silence deepened. Even sunlight felt borrowed. The town went on pretending, baking bread, sweeping porches, ringing bells that echoed too long. But beneath the surface, the ground pulsed like a heartbeat. The air vibrated with something unseen, something waiting. Daniel kept the broken coil near him at all times. He called it the anchor. It was useless now, or so he thought. Eli translated the last of the church records and realized that VALTRON's seal wasn't meant to trap darkness. It was meant to balance it. The wells were not prisons. They were lungs. And the world had stopped breathing right. Lyra woke one night to the sound of whispers, not from the fog, but from her own shadow. It told her that the mark on her wrist wasn't a curse. It was a connection. A reminder that light without darkness is blind. By dawn, the four of them gathered again at the old depot, where the town first began. The ground there hummed softly, like an engine remembering how to turn. They placed the broken coil at the center of a chalk circle Eli had drawn. Lyra stood over it, her wrist glowing like liquid silver. The others joined hands. The air shifted. The world leaned closer. From the fog outside the depot doors came a sound, slow, deliberate footsteps. VALTRON. His shadow filled the walls before his body did. He looked the same, but quieter. Like something trying to remember why it had become what it was. He spoke without words. Lyra's light answered. The depot windows burst inward. Wind spiraled. The air crackled with voices, dozens, hundreds, each one a lost name returning home. Daniel held Lyra's shoulder, steadying her as the light poured through her. Eli's circle began to fracture, symbols glowing like stars before fading. Sam shouted something, or maybe prayed. But the wind swallowed the sound. The fog folded into itself. The wells, miles apart, began to glow through the earth. Each one pulsing in rhythm with the others. A heartbeat. The world, breathing again. Lyra's eyes closed. Her mark spread up her arm like wildfire. Daniel reached for her hand, and the coil between them ignited. A sound like thunder and memory filled the air. Light and shadow collided and became one. When the dust settled, the fog was gone. The sky was clear, truly clear, for the first time in months. VALTRON was gone too. Not defeated. Balanced. Returned to whatever place had forgotten him. Lyra stood quietly, her wrist no longer glowing but warm to the touch. Daniel's hand was burned, shaped like the same mark, two halves of one seal. Eli looked at the horizon. He didn't want to destroy it, he said softly. He wanted it to breathe again. The town woke slowly that morning. The bells rang true. The river ran forward. Children played in the open air, unafraid. At night, the townsfolk swore they could still hear a hum, faint, steady, alive, beneath their feet. But no one was afraid anymore. Lyra stood on the bridge where it had begun, watching the water reflect the sky. Daniel stood beside her. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The world exhaled. And in that breath, the fog that once haunted Indiana became nothing more than memory.